Today's guest is Chris Dischinger and also Elly Green from LDG Development. Chris and his wife Lisa co-founded LDG Development in Louisville along with business partner Mark Lechner. The Dischingers are proven leaders with the real estate development industry and are committed to building better lives through developing quality, affordable communities for hardworking families and active seniors. Today, LDG has over 200 employees focused on developing and managing properties for the thousands of families and seniors who are proud to call one of their communities home. Lisa also started the LDG Foundation, the 501c3 focused on improving educational and health outcomes for those LDG serves. This includes out-of-school time, educational programs, helping elementary and middle school students with reading, and providing on-site medical care to more than 1,000 residents. And that's where our other guest, Elly Green, comes in to play with these wraparound services that we have. And Elly's a Cincinnati native and came to Louisville back in 2020 and found her way over to LDG and is very happy about that. So I look forward to talking to you. Chris, how are you?
I'm good today. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Elly, you doing good?
Good, yes.
I appreciate you being here. I really do. And I'm going to start with something a little bit on the lighter side. I understand you guys are UofL fans.
That is true.
And pretty soon you got the Fighting Irish coming in. We'll probably be 5-0 when that happens, hopefully right after with NC State. I think they're playing next.
Let's hope so, yeah.
What kind of tailgate are you going to have when the Irish come in?
Well, so we live a little bit for tailgating. So we've been tailgating right across the street from gate 1 of the stadium for about 16 or 17 years. And it really started out as we got dislocated from our previous tailgating spot, and so we subleased the parking lot, and we've built up a tailgate over the last 15, 16 years, and so we'll be there all excited. But, you know, the things that make a great tailgate are really about community. So what we really like to have is we usually fix food for 400 or 500 people.
Oh, my gosh.
I think we have like 80 or 90 parking spots. And so in addition to, you know, whoever drives in and parks with us, we tend to have people walking down the street or people we know from somewhere else stopping by. And so myself and a crew of a few other guys like to get together and make all the food starting the night before. And so it's just a big party. It's just a big fun thing to do. So
I'll have to stop by there. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, you know, and we're hoping to create more excitement for UofL football and for everything that's going on.
So new coach is doing great so far.
Yeah, so far we have no complaints.
So far, so good. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about, I'd love to talk about your journey into real estate. I had read somewhere that early on when you and Lisa were first married, you left what you were doing at that time and jumped into real estate. Talk a little bit about your journey into that and the decisions that you've made.
Yeah, so real estate, I feel very fortunate I found real estate at a young age. I mean, sometimes people come to it later in life, but I was still that accidental real estate person. And what I mean by that is I had bought a house while I was in college, and we were, we're trying to get established, and I had a job loading trucks and really wasn't making enough money to pay for college and pay for the house and pay for all the bills. And so I started going around talking to people about, hey, can I get a job? And they said, well, you seem like a nice young man. When you finish your degree, come back and see us. We'd love to talk to you about a good paying job. And I'm like, I got to have the money now. I can't wait till, I've got to figure out how to pay for the rest of this college. And so with that, I figured what could I do that doesn't really require me to have graduated yet? And it was real estate. So in the fall semester, I was going to school full time. I was working full time, and I started taking real estate classes on the evenings and weekends. And one thing led to another. And in February, I got my real estate license. In May, because I didn't have a client base, I put together a couple of buddies of mine, and we bought a 5-plex, and I rolled my commission in and borrowed the rest of my part of the down payment. And then in June I got married, and then in July I came home and told my wife, hey, I'm going to do this real estate thing full time. I quit my job today. Let's go. So luckily she's not here to give you that frown and that scowl of, oh, you just married me for my job, didn't you?
I get that. That's funny. It's a great story. And I, I love to hear about the journeys that everybody has. And Elly, you said you had moved here from Cincinnati. Your mom's from here?
Mom's from here. I moved here from Seattle, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Where I was living previously. After I graduated university, I did 2 consecutive long-term volunteer stints, one in Ireland and one in Washington. And so after Washington, I moved to Louisville.
Yeah. And you found your way to LDG after about a year or so that you were here? I think you had said that you had spent some time with Wellspring?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that move.
It was an exciting move. I had always had a background in nonprofit work.
Okay.
At Xavier, it is very social justice driven. You do a lot of volunteering. You do a lot of outreach into the community that you're living around. And so making the switch from Wellspring to LDG was really exciting because we got to have the opportunity to, fly the plane as we build it. And so I was given great trust from Lisa and Chris, and we talked a lot about the services that we want to provide to residents, why residents are the heartbeat of LDG, and what it means to have housing that's stabilized and safe and can lead to long-term success.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, before we wrap up here in terms of just the wraparound services and the things that you're doing, because it's very important to us at St. Vincent de Paul, all the wraparound services, case management, housing navigation, mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling. It really is a critical part to our clients being able to get into permanent housing. Mm-hmm. So I really love to hear about that. But Chris, I want to ask you about the term affordable housing. And
Sure.
and so again, I'm not steeped in housing and real estate. I'm new to this, but I have such a better appreciation for that term. And it's kind of a loaded term. And if you really don't know what that means, it's kind of like, affordable housing, yeah, it's whatever. But when you start talking about individuals at 50% of median income, it's a family of 4 making $50,000 or so, or 80% of median income, family of 4 making $70,000, somewhere in that range. Talk to us about, help our listeners better understand that term, affordable housing, and what that means.
Well, what I'd say is affordable housing gets a bad rap a little bit. I think that people think of affordable housing, what they think of is what the government would have built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, low cost, poorly designed or barrack-style housing. And so people think, affordable housing, you're going to bring, the projects to our neighborhood. But the reality of affordable housing is, and the true definition is that no individual or family should pay more than 30% of their income for housing. So theoretically, if you make $1 million a year, you shouldn't pay more than $300,000 a year for your housing. That's not generally what we deal with, but that is affordable housing to that person. So if you make $100,000 a year, no more than $30,000 of your income should go towards housing. But with our approach, really, if you think about historically, when World War II was over, our soldiers came back. What did we do? We said, we've got all these mostly young men coming back from war. They're going to start families. What are we going to do? So we went out as a country and built all of these houses, many of them 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, basic starter housing. And then throughout, the history of our country, we've had different types of housing in different times. And, many of those houses that were built after the war are great houses that have been added on to and expanded, and then we need all kinds of housing. We need everything from high-end, big houses to small starter houses. And so affordable housing is really trying to fit a niche that, can't be built with today's regulations, material costs, scarcity of land, and all those kind of things. So there are just programs to help produce that housing.
Yeah, we have permanent supportive housing on campus, and it's supported through HUD. But there's individuals that live on our campus that 30% of zero is zero.
Right.
You know,
no, absolutely.
I mean, it's a whole different, and I think for those that are listening, it's really important to understand that there's members of our community, they'll never be able to pay market rate, ever.
Right.
I pray to God that they would, but I think in our community, we're always going to have that need for that sort of housing. But even then, talking about what we were talking about, I have a daughter that's a school teacher, and thank goodness, a couple of years back, she was able to buy a house at 3% mortgage, and it's less than what it would cost her in rent today to have the home that she has. But if she was doing that today on a school teacher's salary, it would be really, even for somebody like that has a master's. So we're not talking about folks that are on the street, that are unhoused, when we talk about affordable housing as well.
Well, that's the misnomer we have every day, is that, you got a bunch of people living in your house, living in your apartments. They don't have a job. They could work. They don't want to work. What we find is most of the people live in our apartments have a job. Mm-hmm. Something like 80 or 90% of the people who live in our apartments have a car. So they are productive members of society. They just might not make as much money as other people. Your clerk at the gas station, your barista, mm-hmm. All kinds of people, live in affordable housing, and they've really traded service for salary. They may not be the highest paid people, but they're certainly important people in our community and important for all of us to be there for.
We talking about apartment units, but in the beginning, LDG's focus was on single family homes. And, you grew to having over 500 homes, commercial real estate, 17 states. And in 2002, you all made that shift into multifamily units. What was the reason for making that shift?
Well, I think there was really a couple of reasons. One is to be able to scale, to be able to provide more housing units. And we're going to talk about services and the services mm-hmm. we try to give back and provide to our residents. I'm very proud of that. And Elly and my wife Lisa might push back on me this, but if I could do one thing, if I had one wish, it would be to create as many housing units as I could. To me, that's the most important thing. That is the basis of a person's family. You can't have a good school life and learn if you don't have a stable place to live. If you have a stable place to live, you will do better in school. You have more opportunities to get a better job. That's upward mobility. We have this thing in our country about the American dream is owning a home, and I am 100% for if everybody could own a home, I'd love to see it. But not everybody can, not everybody wants to, and not everybody should own a home. We saw that a little bit with the financial crisis, is sometimes you can stretch too far and get yourself in trouble being a homeowner versus, the convenience of being able to rent. So what we find is that, that's where your people live, where your family lives and where they grow up. And that's sort of the basis of everything.
It's interesting that you say that. It's a good friend of mine that came to visit us at St. Vincent de Paul. And I didn't know all of his past, but I knew that there were some challenges there. And we're sitting in our conference room, and he goes, when I was growing up, all through high school, I lived in the apartment complex over there over my shoulder, which is one of our apartment complexes. I never knew that. He said, if we didn't have that, if me and my brother and sister did not have that stability that created, my mother never could have had us all together. And it was a difference maker. And for someone like him, he's a professional now. He's got his own company and has really done great. But if it wasn't for that safe place to go, to have a place to study, a playground outside kind of thing, the story could have been very different.
I don't know when in this country we decided being poor or being of modest means was somehow made you less of a human being. Yeah. And we fight against that image every day, and quite frankly, it aggravates me. I've been in neighborhood meetings before where somebody has said something like, well, I don't want those people here because they haven't earned the right to live in this neighborhood. You know, I earned my way into this neighborhood. And what's crazy about that is, I promise you, most of those people I've talked to, their folks had money, maybe their grandparents had money. They didn't pay for college. Somebody else paid for their college. They probably got a down payment or maybe even had a house gifted to them, but somehow they earned their way into the neighborhood. And somebody who's out there working a minimum wage or a slightly greater than minimum wage job didn't earn their way there. You know, they're out there working and trying to make it happen every day.
You know, Elly, I'm gonna shift to you, but I just want to say one thing to that about folks. I earned this, right? You know, I'm a big believer in God's grace, and it's undeserved favor. Right. It's not, you can't earn that. And there's blessings that we all have. I know there's things that I own, and mostly what I own is my mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so I agree with you completely. And part of the reason why we do this podcast is to try to tell that story and break down those myths. Because the folks that come to us, while they may have, situations in which they're suffering from mental illness, substance abuse, addictions, whatever the case may be, that's not why they're homeless. You could ask any family, gee, do you have a family member that has those challenges? Do you have a family member that may be in an abusive relationship? And most families, well, if they admit it, they're going to raise their hand and say, yeah, we do. But they have that safety net. They have that ability to be able to stay on their feet, whereas the clients that we're dealing with, they don't. And the reality is that's not why they're homeless. They're homeless and unhoused because there's not enough units for them to live in.
That's right. That's exactly right. We see it every day. I grew up in a modest family, but I always had a safety net of some sort.
Yep.
What we'll see with our residents, oftentimes they're a car breaking down from disaster. Car breaks down, costs $3,000 to fix it. They don't have $3,000 saved up. Now they can't get to work. They either miss work and now they're behind on their bills because they didn't go to work, or in the worst case scenario, they can't get to work, so they lose their job. Now they don't have money, a car, or a job. Well, what's the next thing? They can't pay their rent. And so it just really is infuriating for people to think that because somebody has tragedy in their life, and a broken down car can be tragedy, that somehow they're less than somebody else.
Well, God bless you in the work that you do. Mission statement is everyone deserves a quality place to live.
Yeah, we believe that, and we try to live by it. Yep. It's on our wall, and we try to make our decisions by that. And that's...
Yeah, I know, I get it. And so, Elly, you've been very patient. Thank you. As we're jawing back and forth, you've been very patient. Let's talk about the services, the wraparound services. Again, the mission statement, everyone deserves a quality place to live. They also deserve to have these services, they wraparound services. Talk to us a little bit about what you all are doing at LDG.
They deserve those quality places to live, and they deserve to stay in those quality places of living. And so I work in the spheres of health and wellness, career advancements and education, and then community building. And so we're doing the fun things like after-school programs, food pantries. We work with Norton Healthcare to talk about open opportunities for jobs, things that you can pay to go through. So if you wanted to learn anything from, being a janitor in a hospital to being a surgery technician, that Norton Healthcare will pay you while you do that. And so the Norton Healthcare has this fantastic bus called the Prevention and Wellness Unit, and it comes out and it parks in front of our Jefferson Green building twice a week from 9 to 4 without end. And it's been there since January of last year. And so we have services like that are immediately available to our residents. And so going from Norton Healthcare to Evolve 502 for the after-school programs to Dare to Care with the food insecurity So we try to look at the holistic needs of residents and meet them where they need to be.
That's great. On Evolve 502, I want to touch on that because I'm on the board of Evolve 502. And we also are a learning hub at St. Vincent de Paul and have the Backpack League and all that. Tell us what you're doing with Evolve 502.
Yes. So we have started working with Evolve 502, let's see, the school year of 2022 to 2023 was our largest pilot program. And we went from having 5 kids to 45 kids enrolled.
That's amazing.
And these are kids who live at the property, whose parents, work for the most part. So they're being dropped off by the bus. They're latchkey kids. So we offer up our clubhouse as a space for them to meet, to learn, to be in communion with one another and learn these fantastic just life skills as well as bolstering their education.
Are they tutoring? Is that
Yes.
So the reading tutoring?
So we do I'd Rather Be Reading.
Yeah.
So they do small group interventions. We got our testing scores back recently, and we were really excited to see that the children who participate in our after-school learning and also out of school time, like our summer programming, those children have made larger gains in their test scores rather than just JCPS kids who don't do any kind of after-school learning. We outperform them by 2 or 3 times.
That is amazing. And I you talk about what you all are doing in your mission. 3rd and 5th grade reading levels are those points in a young person's life that is extremely important. Not reading at 3rd or 5th grade, the trajectory is not good. And so the fact that you're doing that, not only are you helping the parents with the job training and having a safe place, affordable place to live, you're helping that next generation of kids that they never would have had that.
Right. That's
really amazing. Because I'm shocked by the proficiency levels across the county, how low they are. And so the fact that you're able to do that, that's pretty cool stuff.
We think so too. Last summer we had one summer camp that ran for 6 weeks, and this past summer of 2023 we had 4 camps that were open for 5 weeks, and we were able to enroll 120 students.
Wow.
And that's just our kids across 4 properties.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
And the healthcare stuff too. I don't know if you do flu shots and vaccinate.
We
all
do.
That.
We did a big flu shot event recently. We also do more comprehensive things like car seat checks. We did one with Norton recently that was safe storage. So it was talking about firearm safety as well as medication locks. We did cooking classes for grandparents, for families with young children, and also more pediatric centered ones. So kids can be hands-on in the kitchen and also talk about fractions and vocabulary and roll in more educational things also with that.
Yeah, that's really neat too, because there's opportunities there to start teaching about healthy cooking as well. I like buffalo chicken wings,
right.
But probably can't eat those every night.
And the seniors that we have really love it also, because it's a chance for them to come out of their units, see who's around, escape from kind of patterns of isolation, and they gather in the community room for an hour and just hang out with one another and watch a person cook from dare to care, and they do hands-on things as well. And then
cool.
They also get to take the food home with them with packages to make it themselves again, to recreate the meal.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
That's great. Do you see that expanding?
Yes.
Beyond Kentucky as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are already doing programming in Kentucky, Texas, and Georgia. And I think South Carolina might be the next one.
Well, honestly, I know Lisa was going to try to be here today, but she was meeting with people in Georgia that are trying to, help us bring some of these services to all the properties we're involved in.
Really great. Really is. Okay, so let's I want to shift a little bit back, because the affordable housing side of things is such an important topic. And I know the current administration, Mayor Greenberg, is focused on, I think he said in his term, 15,000 units that he wants to have built. But you also see statistics out there from the Coalition of the Homeless that talk about 30,000 units. It just blows my mind. I know you all have, 4,000 or something, and you're growing here in Kentucky.
Correct.
Talk to us about that number and what that means for the community, because it's not millions of dollars, it's billions of dollars.
Yeah, the problem is there are all kinds of levels of income. So, if all of a sudden we built $30,000 million houses, that wouldn't help anything, right? So, there have to be all kinds of levels of housing. So, yes, we certainly, if the last few years, we've seen it in the for sale real estate market, right? Mm-hmm. somebody goes to buy a house, it's listed for X dollars. By next Wednesday, please submit your offer. And the question is not how much over listed price, not are you going to offer close to listed price, but how much over listed price you're going to offer. Well, all of that is a symptom of not having built enough housing in the last 10 years. We used to build a lot of single family houses in this community, but as regulations have gotten steeper, what all you have to build in order to develop a subdivision, what you have to do to bring utilities to that. We haven't built enough apartments. We haven't built enough high-end. We haven't built enough, more affordable stuff. And so, each year that gap seems to get wider and wider and wider.
Yeah, it does, and it really is something in which the community is going to have to embrace and get behind. It's not just government won't be able to solve that.
15 years ago, when you talked about affordable housing in Louisville, it was sort of a discussion point of something we wanted. And I think in the last mayoral election, it was the second or third highest priority issue. So it went really from 15 or 20 years ago being something esoteric that people were interested in but weren't worried about. And if you think because we operate in multiple states and because I've traveled most of the country, what you'll find is Louisville has a affordable housing problem, but it doesn't have the same problem that a San Francisco or LA or an Austin, Texas or a Nashville, Tennessee has. And that's kind of the difference. 15 years ago, New York and LA and San Francisco probably had a problem. Austin, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee didn't. Now they have a big problem. And where the unique opportunity we have is although we have a problem, it's not a mega crisis. I'd call it a small crisis. It's the lower lower down the scale of rent, the bigger the gap is. But if we have the opportunity today to sort of attack this problem in a reasonable way. And really, you talked about it earlier, homelessness is a housing problem. There's not enough places to live. I've seen people buy stuff that was built 50 years ago, spend a little bit of money, painting it, putting it in a granite countertop and raising the rent $250 a month. Well, why could they do that? Because there's not enough of the next level up of housing. So now people are investing money in older stuff to bringing it up to raise the rents. And so, the best thing we could do for families and for housing and for affordability is build more units.
It's interesting that you say that, and Home Depot likes it.
Yeah, they do.
Right? But, you mentioned Austin, and you mentioned Nashville. There's lessons to be learned from that. And those are both places and states where there's no income tax.
Right.
And our legislature is starting to move towards lowering the income tax ultimately to zero. So it becomes, those were very desirable places for folks to move to, but they didn't keep up with the housing that they needed, right? It's kind of a canary in a coal mine.
Housing is really infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you don't build enough roads, if you don't extend enough sewers, if you don't have enough schools, you don't have enough infrastructure. Well, housing is part of that thing. I always say too that, if you want to have good economic development, you got to have places for people to live.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned with, the great news is the battery plant and all the jobs that are coming to Kentucky. It seems like there's another announcement every week. But then I'm concerned about, where are people going to live? Where are we going to have enough housing? And so, if we don't get ahead of it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. So how can, and I appreciate this. Elly, I appreciate you being here. Good luck to you with all the services that you provide. It makes such a big difference, especially for the youth. I mean, I'm really passionate about education, and I can only imagine that the parents of those children are pretty happy about it.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And and I'd love for you to make a parting comment after this one last question that I have. And I want you to think about, if you had a wish list of other things that you could do, what would they be? But Chris, how can the public get behind and advocate, just the average person that's out there, and advocate for more affordable housing?
I think it's easy. When I always say, if you had a 1,000-acre farm and you decided you were going to cut it into 2 500-acre farms, somebody would show up and say, we have no 1,000-acre farms. We shouldn't allow this. Often people fight against change. But and here's the other thing, the people that are upset that don't want something are the most vocal. They're the ones that show up to public meetings. They're the ones that reach out to their council people. They're the ones that are going to reach out and say, we don't want this. The people that know we need more housing, we need to all love it if you'd show up at a planning commission meeting or a neighborhood meeting and say, hey, we want you to build this, instead of we don't want you to build this. But even easier than that, email your council person. Say, hey, I am in support of this. The other night, somebody was trying to create a single-family housing subdivision that was going to be a little more dense than what it was approved for. And the local media wrote something about, really slamming against that. And so I personally reached out to a few people and said, how could we help? How could we support this? We had nothing to do with it. We don't build single family houses. We didn't have any involvement in it. But as a citizen of Louisville, the more of that gets built, the less pressure on the rents of the apartments and so on and so forth. So, I think that really, if people, I have a lot of people come up to me and say, hey, we support what you're doing and we appreciate that, but use your voice.
Yeah.
Send an email, talk to your council people, because what they all hear is, I don't want that.
Yep. Well, hopefully there'll be lots of people listening to this podcast.
Let's hope.
Right? Elly, what is it that you love about LDG? I know you got your boss, the big guy here.
I love the compassion within LDG.
Yeah.
That Chris and Lisa, through the multifamily, looked at this fabulous, I'm not going to use the word empire, construct they have, all these houses across the country. And they said, how do we enhance and enrich the lives of residents? And that's through resident services. And that took, I think, a lot of courage to step up and say, we can do more.
Well, that's a great way to end. Chris,
Thank
Elly,
you.
I really appreciate you all. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.